There are moments in life when heaven starts to move things on your behalf, long before you can see it with your eyes. You feel a stirring in your spirit. Things begin to shift. What used to be comfortable suddenly feels tight. What used to make sense no longer does. And you wonder, God, what's happening? Let me tell you, when God is about to give you something big, He doesn't just change your situation, He prepares you. Because what's coming isn't small, it's weighty, it carries purpose. And before He places something great in your hands, He strengthens your heart to hold it. There are moments in life when everything familiar begins to feel foreign. The rhythm that once brought you peace now brings restlessness. The doors that used to open easily now seem locked tight. You pray, but heaven seems silent. You plan, but nothing seems to work. You start to wonder if you did something wrong, if maybe God has forgotten you. But what if this isn't rejection? What if it's redirection? What if the very discomfort you're trying to escape is the sign that God is lifting you to another level? When God wants to promote you, He rarely starts by giving you more comfort. Instead, He introduces challenge. He allows situations that stretch your faith, pressure that refines your motives, and moments that expose what's still fragile within you. Why? Because before He can elevate you publicly, He must establish you privately. Comfort builds familiarity, but discomfort builds capacity. And God knows that the higher He takes you, the stronger your foundation must be. Discomfort is heaven's classroom. It's where God teaches you to rely not on what you can see, but on what He said. It's where you learn to walk by faith when feelings fail you. Often we pray for blessings, but God answers by sending process. We say, Lord, enlarge my territory. And He responds by enlarging our patience. We ask for strength, and He allows struggle. We ask for clarity, and He permits confusion, because it is in those moments that your roots go deeper. Think about how an eagle trains its young. When the eaglets grow too comfortable in the nest, the mother begins to remove the soft feathers and leaves behind the thorns and sticks. What was once a cozy resting place becomes uncomfortable. The eaglet starts to squirm, desperate to find comfort again. But it can't, and that discomfort drives it to the edge. Eventually, the mother pushes it out of the nest, forcing it to spread its wings for the first time. It's terrified, but that's how it learns to fly. Without the discomfort, the eaglet would never discover what it was born to do. God does the same with us. He removes what's comfortable so that we can grow into what's possible. When you start to feel that divine discomfort, it's not punishment, it's preparation. It's His way of saying, you've outgrown this level. I'm calling you higher. You might not see it now, but the unease is actually evidence of His love, because He refuses to let you settle for something beneath your potential. The children of Israel had to experience this too. After years of slavery in Egypt, they finally stepped into freedom. But before they could reach the promised land, they had to go through the wilderness, a season of discomfort, uncertainty, and testing. It wasn't easy. They faced hunger, thirst, and fear. Many thought God had abandoned them. But that wilderness wasn't meant to destroy them. It was meant to develop them. The discomfort stripped away their dependence on Egypt and built their dependence on God. It prepared them to inherit the promise without losing themselves in it. The truth is, we all crave growth, but resist the process. We love the idea of breakthrough, but dread the breaking. Yet growth always feels like breaking at first. It's the tension between where you've been and where God is taking you. The pain you feel is not proof that God has left you. It's proof that He's forming you. Diamonds are made under pressure. Gold is purified in fire. Seeds grow best in dark soil. And faith is strengthened when you can't see the outcome, but still choose to trust. Consider the story of Joseph. He had a dream that one day he would rise to greatness. But before the dream came true, he was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. For years, nothing made sense. Every stage of his journey brought more discomfort. Yet every setback was actually a setup. The pit positioned him for Potiphar's house. Potiphar's house positioned him for the prison, and the prison positioned him for the palace. God used every uncomfortable season to prepare Joseph for the weight of influence he would one day carry. That's what God does with you. The season of discomfort isn't meant to discourage you. It's meant to develop you. It's training your spirit to stand firm, teaching you to hear his voice and building the character required for your next assignment. Because promotion in the kingdom isn't just about elevation. It's about transformation. God won't promote what hasn't been purified. So if you find yourself in a place where things aren't adding up, where the pressure is high and the answers are few, take heart. This isn't the end of your story. It's the shaping of your story. The season of discomfort is not a tomb. It's a womb. Something new is being born in you. God is preparing to move you from where you are to where you're meant to be. When it hurts the most, hold on to this truth. God is not trying to break you down. He's trying to build you up. Every uncomfortable step is a step toward destiny. And one day soon, you'll look back and realize the pain you felt was actually the proof that promotion was on the way. When you are close to stepping into something significant, the atmosphere around you begins to change. Suddenly, things that once came easily start to feel difficult. People you trusted may begin to misunderstand you. Opportunities you counted on might vanish. Doors that were once wide open may now slam shut. You start to question yourself, wondering if you made a wrong turn, if you misheard God, if maybe the vision in your heart was just imagination. But what if that resistance you're feeling isn't a sign that you're off track, but a sign that you're on the verge of something divine? Resistance always increases before a breakthrough. It's one of the spiritual laws of advancement. The moment you begin to move toward your God-given destiny, opposition rises to meet you. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because what you're carrying has weight in the spirit. The enemy doesn't waste energy attacking those who pose no threat to him. He targets those who are dangerous, those who carry purpose, those whose obedience will break chains and shift generations. So, if the battle around you has intensified, it's not a signal to retreat, it's a sign to stand firm. The truth is, resistance refines. It reveals what's real in you. It exposes whether your faith is rooted in emotion or conviction. Anyone can believe when life is smooth, but true faith is proven in the fire. When resistance comes, it shakes off the excess, burns away impurities, and strengthens your resolve. What God is doing in you through the resistance is just as important as what He's preparing to do for you after it. Sometimes resistance doesn't come through open conflict. It comes subtly. It shows up as delay, discouragement, or doubt. You begin to feel tired, weary, tempted to lower your expectations. That's exactly what the enemy wants. His goal is to make you stop short of your promise. But you can't let temporary pressure talk you out of permanent purpose. The storm is not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're advancing. Look at the story of Nehemiah. God called him to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, an assignment that carried divine importance. But the moment Nehemiah started the work, resistance came. Enemies rose up to mock him, discourage him, and even threaten his life. They spread rumors to make him stop building. They did everything they could to distract and intimidate him. Yet Nehemiah refused to be moved. He said, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. He recognized that the resistance wasn't random. It was confirmation that what he was building mattered. The opposition didn't mean God wasn't with him. It meant the enemy feared what would happen once the wall was finished. That's how you need to see your own resistance. When warfare intensifies, when people start to pull away, when finances tighten, when the noise of life grows louder, it's not time to give up. It's time to press in. The pressure is a prophetic signal that something powerful is on the horizon. God allows resistance to train you for the weight of what's coming. If He gave you the blessing without the battle, you wouldn't have the strength to sustain it. The fight builds the faith that keeps you standing once the promise arrives. There's also another side to resistance. It clarifies your calling. When people turn against you or when life throws curveballs, you discover who you really are. You learn what matters most. You see which relationships are genuine and which were seasonal. God uses resistance to refine your circle and focus your purpose. Sometimes He allows conflict not to destroy you, but to detach you from distractions. Think about a seed planted in the ground. Before it breaks through the soil, it faces pressure on every side. Darkness surrounds it. The weight of the dirt above seems too heavy to bear. But in that hidden struggle, roots are forming. Life is developing beneath the surface. When the moment is right, that same resistance, The very soil that pressed against it becomes the platform that supports its growth. That's what resistance does. It feels like opposition, but it's actually the environment God uses for transformation. A simple example of this truth can be seen in how an archer uses a bow. The arrow cannot be launched forward without first being pulled back. The further it's drawn back, the more power it gains when released. The tension is necessary for distance. In the same way, when you feel pulled back, when life feels like it's going in reverse, don't despair. God is positioning you for greater impact. The resistance is building momentum for the release that's coming. So when resistance rises, change your perspective. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" start saying, "What is this preparing me for?" Because the struggle you're facing is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of significance. Heaven wouldn't allow this level of warfare if you weren't close to a major win. The enemy doesn't attack on the battlefield of the ordinary. He fights hardest on the threshold of the extraordinary. Stay anchored in faith. Keep doing the right thing even when it feels like nothing is working. Keep praying, keep sowing, keep believing. Don't let frustration make you forfeit what faith can finish. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. Every trial is a training ground. Every delay is set up for destiny. The resistance you're facing today is the proof that a release is on the way. And when that breakthrough comes, you'll see that everything the enemy meant for harm was actually God's tool to push you into purpose. When God is preparing to take you higher, He doesn't begin by adding more to your life. He begins by asking you to let go. He calls you to surrender, not because He wants to deprive you, but because He wants to prepare you. Every time God wants to bring increase, He first invites you into a deeper level of trust. Surrender is not about losing control. It's about shifting control from your limited understanding to His unlimited wisdom. Many people want elevation, but few are willing to surrender. We pray for blessings, for opportunities, for expansion, but God knows that before He gives you what's big, He must first see if He can trust you with what's small. And the test of trust often comes disguised as surrender. He will ask you to lay down something precious, something that feels essential, so He can replace it with something eternal. When God asks you to release something, it's never random. It's always intentional. He sees what's ahead even when you can't. Sometimes He'll ask you to let go of a relationship that no longer aligns with your destiny. Sometimes it's a dream that you've been forcing or a timeline you've been clinging to. Sometimes it's your need to be understood, to be in control, or to have everything figured out. Whatever it is, God's request is not to punish you, it's to prepare you, because you can't receive with clenched fists. Until you open your hands, He can't fill them. Surrender is the doorway to transformation. It's where faith stops being theory and becomes reality. It's where you discover that God's plan for your life is not only better, it's bigger than anything you could have designed for yourself. But to walk in that plan, you have to be willing to release the one you made. This is where trust becomes real. We often say we trust God, but true trust is revealed when obedience requires sacrifice. It's easy to follow God when His plan aligns with your preference. It's harder when His will interrupts your comfort. Yet, that's exactly where growth happens. When you say, "God, I don't understand, but I'll still obey," that's where heaven moves. That's when the supernatural unfolds. One of the most powerful pictures of surrender in Scripture is Abraham on Mount Moriah. After years of waiting for a son, after decades of unfulfilled promise, God finally gave him Isaac, the miracle child, the fulfillment of every dream and prayer. Then one day, God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. It was an unthinkable request. Everything in Abraham's heart must have screamed in confusion. How could God ask for the very thing He had promised? Yet Abraham obeyed. He climbed the mountain, tied his son to the altar, and raised the knife, believing that even if God took Isaac, He could raise him back to life. That's surrender. That's faith. Abraham's willingness to let go unlocked heaven's provision. God stopped him before the sacrifice and provided a ram in the thicket instead. Abraham called that place Jehovah-Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide. That moment proved that surrender never leads to loss. It leads to revelation. Abraham learned that God's provision always meets obedience, and that whatever you give up for God, he replaces with something greater. In the same way, when you surrender your plans, your pride, or your comfort, God meets you with something better, peace that surpasses understanding, purpose that fulfills your soul, and favor that exceeds your imagination. You can't walk into your next season holding on to what belongs to your last one. Every promotion requires pruning. Every new level demands a deeper yes. The reason surrender feels hard is because we're wired to hold on to what's familiar. The unknown feels risky, even when God is the one calling us into it. But faith begins where understanding ends. When God calls you to let go, he's already gone ahead of you to prepare the next step. He's not asking you to surrender to leave you empty. He's asking you to make space for more. Think of a farmer who wants to grow a new crop. Before planting new seeds, he must clear the old field. He must break the soil, uproot weeds, and sometimes even burn away what's dead. It looks destructive, but it's actually preparation for growth. That's what God does in our lives. He removes what no longer serves us so he can plant something that will bless us. The pain of surrender is the price of harvest. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over. It's the shift from my will to thy will. It's saying, God, I don't have to control the outcome. I trust you with the process. When you reach that point, peace enters. Not because everything makes sense, but because you've placed everything in the hands of the one who does. The deeper your surrender, the greater your capacity to receive. God can only fill what's empty. That's why sometimes he allows certain things to fall apart, not to destroy you, but to empty you, because a full heart leaves no room for divine filling. So when God asks you to let go, don't resist it. See it as a divine exchange. The miracle you've been waiting for is often on the other side of your surrender. Every time you choose to release instead of resist, you move closer to the promise. You might not see it immediately, but later you'll look back and realize what you thought was lost was actually the beginning of your increase. Surrender doesn't take something from you. It positions you to receive something bigger. And when you finally say, yes, heaven says, now. There comes a time in every believer's life when what used to feel right no longer fits. The job that once inspired you starts to feel draining. The conversations that once filled you now feel empty. The rhythm of your days becomes too small for the size of your spirit. You can't explain it, but deep down, something inside you whispers, there's more than this. That feeling isn't confusion or discontentment. It's a holy restlessness. It's not the same as anxiety or frustration. It's not born out of fear or impatience. It's heaven's gentle way of calling you forward, telling you that you've outgrown your current season, and it's time to step into something greater. When God is preparing to shift your life, he rarely announces it with thunder or lightning. More often, he stirs your spirit. You start to feel unsettled in places that once felt comfortable. He begins to loosen your attachment to what you've always known so that when it's time to move, you won't cling to what you should be releasing. This restlessness isn't punishment, it's preparation. God begins to disturb your peace in one season so he can enlarge your capacity for the next. You see, comfort is both a blessing and a trap. It's wonderful when you're healing or recovering, but it can become dangerous when it starts to limit your growth. The moment you start to idolize comfort, you risk missing God's calling. The holy restlessness comes as a divine nudge to remind you that your destiny isn't behind you. It's ahead of you. The longer you resist it, the heavier it feels. The more you delay it, the more uncomfortable you become. God knows that if he doesn't allow a stirring in your spirit, you might settle in a place that was only meant to be temporary. Think about Moses. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by luxury and privilege, yet something inside him could never fully rest there. Even though he was treated as royalty, there was a holy restlessness in his heart. He could see the suffering of his people, and though he tried to suppress it, he couldn't shake the sense that he was meant for more than the comfort of the palace. That inner stirring was God's call to purpose. It eventually led Moses to leave Egypt, encounter God in the burning bush, and become the deliverer of an entire nation. But it all began with restlessness, a divine dissatisfaction with the ordinary. That's what God often does before promotion. He allows a spiritual stirring that breaks your attachment to the current level. The restlessness grows because your spirit recognizes what your mind can't yet understand. There's a new assignment waiting. You might try to pray it away, distract yourself, or convince yourself that you're just tired, but the feeling lingers. That's because it's not emotional, it's spiritual. You are feeling the pull of destiny. This restlessness may also show up as loss of interest in things that once excited you. You might notice that certain conversations, environments, or even habits no longer feel aligned with who you're becoming. That's not failure, it's transformation. God is changing your appetite to match your next assignment. He's weaning you off what's familiar so that you'll be ready to embrace what's fresh. When you sense that kind of shift, don't panic. Don't assume you're backsliding or losing direction. You're simply being reoriented. The hardest part about this process is that God often doesn't reveal the next step right away. He invites you to move before He shows you where you're going. It's uncomfortable, but that's how faith grows. Abraham experienced this when God told him, "Leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house and go to the land I will show you." God didn't give him a map. He gave him a promise. Abraham obeyed because he trusted that the one who was calling him forward was already waiting for him ahead. A short but powerful example of this in everyday life is like when a bird teaches its young to fly. The mother bird knows when her baby has grown enough to leave the nest. She begins to make the nest uncomfortable, removing soft feathers and leaving sharp twigs. The baby bird doesn't understand why home no longer feels safe. It becomes restless, shifting, flapping its wings, longing for something it can't yet name. But that discomfort is divine design. The mother is pushing the bird toward flight. Without that restlessness, the baby would never discover its wings. That's how God deals with us. The nest of one season becomes too small because He's calling us to soar in the next. The holy restlessness you feel is not a sign that you're lost. It's a sign that you're being launched. You may not see the full picture yet, but God does. He knows the land He's calling you to, the doors He's about to open, and the people He's preparing for your path. Your only responsibility is to listen, trust, and obey the stirring. When that restlessness comes, don't numb it, nurture it. Don't fight it, follow it. Lean into prayer, seek His voice. Ask Him to clarify the next step. It may not come all at once, but as you take one obedient step after another, peace will return, not the peace of comfort, but the peace of alignment. Because here's the truth. The presence of holy restlessness doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something right is about to begin. God is calling you out of the familiar into the fruitful, out of what's safe into what's significant. That stirring inside your soul is heaven whispering, there's more. And if you trust that whisper, you'll find yourself stepping into the very promise you've been praying for all along. There's something about walking with God that never fully makes sense to the human mind. We want to see the whole picture before we take the first step. We want the details, the timeline, the explanation, and the assurance that everything will work out. But that's not how faith operates. God rarely reveals the full plan in advance because faith was never meant to be built on certainty. It was meant to be built on trust. He doesn't ask for full understanding. He asks for full obedience. And it's only after we move that clarity begins to come. When God gives you an instruction, He's not trying to confuse you. He's inviting you into partnership, but that partnership requires movement. Many people pray for direction, but stay still, waiting for every detail to make sense before acting. Yet in the kingdom, understanding follows obedience, not the other way around. The light doesn't shine on the whole path, it shines on the next step. And if you'll take that step, God will reveal the one after it. Abraham understood this truth deeply. When God told him to leave his home, his relatives, and everything familiar, He didn't hand him a map. He simply said, "Go to the land I will show you." That's it. No coordinates, no details, no explanation, just a promise. Abraham could have argued. He could have said, "Lord, show me where we're going first." But instead, he packed up and went. His obedience opened the door to revelation. Once he started walking, God began to show him the land. Clarity came after movement. And through that obedience, Abraham became the father of faith. The reason God operates this way is because he's not just trying to take you somewhere, he's trying to make you someone. Obedience shapes character. It teaches humility, patience, and dependence. If God gave you all the answers up front, you'd rely on information instead of intimacy. You'd trust the plan more than the planner. So he reveals just enough to build your faith, but withholds enough to keep you close. Often, we confuse confusion with calling. We think that if something doesn't make sense, it must not be God. But in reality, some of the greatest moves of God begin in uncertainty. When Peter saw Jesus walking on the water, he said, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come." Jesus didn't give him a detailed explanation about how water walking works. He simply said, "Come." That one word required total trust. Peter had to step out of the safety of the boat before the miracle happened. The water didn't solidify under his feet until he moved. The miracle met him in motion. That's how obedience works. It activates heaven's power. The moment you obey, things start to align. Doors begin to open. Provision appears. Peace replaces confusion. But it all starts with a step, and sometimes that step doesn't make sense to anyone else. Obedience often looks illogical until after it works. Noah looked foolish building an ark when there was no rain. Moses looked foolish lifting a staff over the sea. Mary looked foolish telling people she was carrying the Son of God. Yet every act of obedience was a bridge to divine clarity. God is more interested in your yes than your why. When you say yes in faith, you position yourself for understanding later. But when you insist on understanding before moving, you delay destiny. Faith requires movement before manifestation. And the beauty of it is, once you obey, you begin to see what God saw all along. You realize that his plan was never about confusion. It was about alignment. A short but powerful example of this is a GPS system. When you enter a destination, it doesn't show you the entire journey on one screen. It gives you one turn at a time. You must start driving before it gives the next instruction. If you sit still waiting for the whole route, you'll never arrive. The system only updates once you're in motion. That's exactly how God's guidance works. The moment you move in obedience, heaven starts updating the route. The next step appears only when you take the last one. Obedience might not always feel comfortable, but it's always purposeful. Sometimes God's instructions seem unreasonable because he's leading you into something unimaginable. You may not see the fruit immediately, but obedience always produces clarity in time. What doesn't make sense in the moment will make perfect sense in hindsight. The step that scared you will one day become the testimony that strengthens others. So if you find yourself in a season where you don't know what's next, don't let that uncertainty paralyze you. Ask yourself, what was the last thing God told me to do? Then do that fully, faithfully, and without hesitation, because clarity is waiting on the other side of your obedience. God never fails to reveal his hand when you move according to his voice. You may not know how everything will come together, but you don't have to. Your job is to trust. His job is to lead. As you take one step of faith at a time, the fog begins to lift, the path becomes clearer, and the promise starts unfolding right before your eyes. Clarity comes after obedience because obedience proves trust, and trust is the currency of heaven. God doesn't reward understanding, he rewards faith. And when you move in faith, he moves in power. The miracle isn't waiting at the end of your obedience. It's released the moment you begin. So step out of the boat, leave your comfort zone, walk toward his voice. You'll see that what once felt uncertain was simply the start of something greater than you could ever imagine. So if life feels heavy, confusing, or uncertain right now, don't lose heart. These are not signs of abandonment. They are signs of acceleration. Heaven is aligning things you can't yet see. God is about to hand you something big, something that will not just bless you, but bless others through you. Stay faithful in the hidden places. Keep your heart clean, your hands open, and your spirit expectant, because the shaking you feel isn't the end. It's the sound of a door unlocking. And when that door opens, you'll realize every delay, every tear, every test was preparing you for this moment.